Let's say you just bought a mansion. Not a big house, a mansion. $50 million, 20,000 square feet. A pool you could almost land a small plane on. You wired the money, you took the keys, and right now you're standing in the entryway thinking the hard part is finally over. Here's the truth. Almost nobody tells you before they hand over that kind of money. Buying the mansion is the cheap part. The purchase price is just the cover charge to get in the door. Because a home like this can quietly cost $2 to $3 million a year to simply exist before you have spent a single night sleeping under its roof. Today, we're going to add it all up, line by line, category by category, and find out what it really costs to own a mega mansion. But before we start spending, let's dream for just a second. Picture waking up in a place like this. Morning light pours through windows that stretch 15 feet toward the ceiling. Your footsteps echo across imported marble as you pass a staircase that honestly belongs in a museum. Outside, an infinity pool spills toward a view that runs for miles with nothing in it that you don't own. There's a home theater downstairs, a wine cellar, a garage built for a dozen cars, a guest wing that most people would happily call a hotel. It is, by every possible measure, the dream. And that exact dream is what the very wealthy are selling themselves the moment they sign. What nobody prints in the glossy brochure is the invoice, the one that arrives every single month after the celebration ends. So let's open it together. We'll start with the one bill you cannot negotiate, cannot avoid, and cannot outrun: property taxes. In most of the United States, you can expect to pay somewhere between 1% and 2% of a home's value every year, though the exact rate swings quite a bit depending on the state and the county you built your dream in. On a $50 million estate, even the low end of that range lands you around $500,000 a year. The high end pushes well past $1 million. And here's the part that really stings. That is not a one-time payment. That is every year, for as long as you hold the keys, whether you're living there or whether the house sits empty. Fall far enough behind, and eventually the government can take the whole thing right back. So before we have hired a single employee, before we have turned on a single light, the mansion is already costing more per year than most beautiful homes cost to buy outright. Next comes insurance, and for a property this size, it earns a category all its own. Insuring a $50 million home is nothing like insuring a normal house. You're covering custom construction, rare and irreplaceable materials, and interiors that you simply cannot walk into a hardware store and replace. Estimates for insuring high-value homes can run anywhere from the tens of thousands into the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and it climbs higher depending on precisely where you chose to build the fantasy. Put that mansion in the wildfire hills of California or along the hurricane coast of Florida, and premiums can rise dramatically, assuming a company is even willing to write the policy at all. Some of the most expensive homes in the country have become genuinely difficult to insure in recent years. That's a problem you never once imagined having back when you were daydreaming about that infinity pool. So let's pause and check the altitude, because we haven't done anything yet. We haven't hired one person. We haven't heated the pool or watered a single plant. And between property taxes and insurance alone, we are already looking at the better part of $1 million a year, easily. And this is where the fantasy quietly turns into a full-time job. Now we arrive at the big one, the single largest line on the entire bill: staff. A mansion is not really a house. It is a small institution, and it does not run itself. To keep a large estate actually functioning, you're typically looking at an entire team of people. Housekeepers to manage tens of thousands of square feet of floors, glass, and surfaces. A private chef. Groundskeepers for the land. A security detail. Drivers. And an estate manager whose entire job is to run all of the others like a business. A serious estate can employ 10 people, 20 people, sometimes more, all full-time. The estate manager alone, the person who runs the entire household, can command well over $150,000 a year on their own. Add a private chef, round-the-clock security, and a full housekeeping team on top of that, and estimates for staffing a large mansion can easily climb past $1 million a year. Every year. Think about what just happened here. You didn't simply buy a home. You quietly became an employer, with a payroll to match. And if you're finding this as strangely fascinating as I do, take one quick second to subscribe, because this channel exists to break down the real price of the things most people only ever dream about. Then do me a favor and tell me in the comments. Knowing everything you've heard so far, would you still walk up and sign for the mansion? Be honest. All right, let's get back to the bill, because believe it or not, we are not even close to finished. Then there is maintenance, and there's a rule of thumb the wealthy tend to learn very quickly. A large property usually costs somewhere around 1 to 2% of its total value every single year, just to keep it from slowly falling apart. On a $50 million home, that is another $500,000 to $1 million a year. And this is the invisible spending, the kind nobody ever brags about at dinner. Industrial-grade heating and cooling for 20,000 square feet. A roof the size of a small parking lot. Pools, elevators, fountains, and mechanical systems that all quietly age at the same time and all eventually demand a check with a lot of zeros on it. Here's the thing to understand about a mansion. It is always slowly breaking somewhere. And your entire job as the owner is to spend whatever it takes to stay one step ahead of the decay. Speaking of keeping the lights on, let's talk about literally keeping the lights on. Utilities, at this scale, stop being a bill and start being a budget line. Heating and cooling a home, the size of a small office building. Running the fountains and the water features. Lighting the grounds so the place glows at night. Heating a pool large enough to swim real laps in. The monthly electric and water bills on a true mega mansion can reach well into 5 figures. Not per year, per month. That is a luxury car payment every 30 days, just to keep the house comfortable and glowing, quite possibly while nobody is even home to enjoy it. Which brings us naturally to security. When you own something worth $50 million, you quietly become a target, and protecting it is never a one-time purchase. Beyond the cameras, the gates, and the alarm systems, many owners at this level pay for constant professional monitoring, and on the very largest estates, for actual personnel on-site around the clock. It turns out peace of mind, at this altitude, is a subscription, and it is not a cheap one. Then there are the grounds themselves. Those manicured gardens, the sculpted hedges, and the impossibly green lawns you see in every single listing photo do not stay that way on their own. They demand constant, skilled, ongoing work, and spread across acres of land. That expense adds up faster than you'd ever guess. And finally, there's the most modern cost of all: staying current. Tastes change. Technology changes. And a mega mansion that starts to look dated is a mansion that quietly begins to lose its value. So the wealthy renovate and update and remodel, pouring fresh money into a home that was already finished and already perfect, purely to keep it from slipping behind the times. And now we reach the cost that never appears on any spreadsheet, the one that, honestly, hurts the most. When you sink $50 million into a mansion, that money stops working for you. It isn't earning interest. It isn't invested in anything that grows. It is simply sitting there, frozen solid in marble and glass and landscaping. Economists call that opportunity cost. And at this level, it is enormous. But it gets worse, because mansions are famously, painfully difficult to sell. The pool of buyers who can actually afford one is tiny, and these homes can sit on the market for years. And when they finally do sell, they often go for a fraction of the original asking price. Consider one of the most infamous examples in recent memory: an enormous Los Angeles estate that was nicknamed fittingly the One. It was once listed with dreams of selling for around $300 million. Then reality arrived. It ultimately sold at auction for roughly $126 million, less than half of the dream. The lesson there is brutal, and it is simple. A mansion is not a piggy bank. It can lose value faster than almost anything else you will ever own. So let's finally add the whole thing up. Property taxes, insurance, staff, maintenance, utilities, security, the grounds. When you combine the major yearly costs of owning a genuine mega mansion, most estimates land somewhere between 2 and 5% of the home's total value, every single year. On our $50 million dream, that works out to roughly $2 to $3 million a year, just to hold on to it. Not to buy it, not to improve it or expand it, simply to keep it standing, staffed, insured, and running. And this is exactly the point where the merely rich separate from the genuinely wealthy. Because the people who could most easily afford these homes very often treat them as something that would surprise you. Not as an investment at all, but as a liability. There is an old piece of wisdom that quietly circulates among the ultra-wealthy. The trophies that cost a fortune just to maintain, the private jet, the mega yacht, the mega mansion, are frequently smarter to rent than to own. The sharpest money in the room often doesn't buy the trophy at all. It rents the fantasy for a week, enjoys every second of it, hands back the keys, and happily lets someone else pay that $2 to $3 million a year bill. So the next time you scroll past a $50 million mansion in a listing, remember what you learned here. That enormous number on the sign is the very beginning of the story. It is not the end. The real price is paid quietly, month after month, for as long as you choose to hold the keys. $2 to $3 million a year, just to keep living inside the dream. So now I genuinely want to hear from you. Knowing the real cost now, the whole cost, would you still want one? And be honest with yourself. If you had it tomorrow, could you actually afford to keep it? Tell me down in the comments. And while you're there, let me know where in the world you're watching from. If you enjoyed pulling back the curtain on this one, you are going to want to stick around. Because next time, we're taking on another toy of the ultra-rich that costs even more than it looks. The private helicopter. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.